If that comes on across this table, no. I'm just telling you.
Okay.
You want to go to Hartford, I'll drive.
Yeah. You'll have your option to do that, but I'm letting you know, A, the total is
Do they have the right to do that? Have you talked to anybody?
we got CCM on it, we got them, I mean, there's a lot of people, there's 169 towns upset about this, so.
Mike, I acknowledge we're not in a good place. Absolutely. We need to.
We got
It's not your pain. No.
so we can, I guess we talk about it, but I just want you guys to know what the number is, and
That's higher than
When's your
ours.
budget come out?
March 1st.
That's when we get them? When's budget meetings start, like the week
March
after?
1st.
Okay.
That's when the presentation is the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance
Okay.
that night, and the budget books might be out a couple days before that.
Gotcha.
That's a timing.
Are you
thing.
putting this information in? Or are you hoping? You haven't made up your mind yet?
No, two things. One is that we use the best available information. That's kind of the guideline.
Yeah.
Right now, the governor's proposal, as much as I
But
hate
that's a
it,
proposal, that's not what's voted on, so.
it's the best available information. This is typically
gotcha.
what we've used. And second, I've got a couple stern emails from Mr. Flynn that basically say that,
I've seen those
kind
stuff.
of better.
Plan for the
using-
worst? Okay.
And we can talk about the process a little bit. Let's get the meeting started. I'm happy to talk about the process and at least what the thoughts are. All right. I'd like to bring this meeting to order. If I'd ask you to stand for the pledge, please, and Mr. Bateson, if you can lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and happy day after Valentine's Day to everybody. First item up, the minutes for the past two meetings. To consider and act upon the minutes of the regular meeting of February 1st, 2017, and the regular special meeting of February 8th, 2017. May I have a motion to accept?
I'll make a motion.
A second?
Second.
Any comments or edits to those minutes?
Yeah, I'd like to make one note. Are we taking both minutes or just the first?
Let's take, the motion included them both. We can split them if you like.
I just want to address, in the February 1st minutes, this review of process, is that what was that your statement?
Yes,
Okay, can we just indicate that it's First Selectman Tetros,
certainly.
so that it doesn't get confused that it's the board speaking?
Yep. Can you...
Can you just put it like a title on that?
Yeah, with your permission, review of process, can you just add statement by First Selectman Mike Tetra? Is that
Yeah,
fair?
That's fine. I just want 20 years from now,
Is
somebody to
there,
look at
is there a
that.
second for that motion?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion on that motion to amend? All in favor? Aye. So the minutes as amended stand before us. Any further amendments or edits?
No, good.
Good. Mr. Bateson? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you. The minutes have been passed. We have next up, and this is for information only, resignations from the Historic District Commission. Christopher Shea, Republican, 917 Merwins Lane, for a term of 11/14 to 11/19 as an alternate. This is because Mr. Shea was moved to a full member. Penfield Reef Lighthouse Committee, Michelle Madugo, Democrat, 455 Primrose Lane, and her resignation date is January 27, 2017. Next up, appointments. And we'll take these one at a time. To hear, consider, and act upon the following appointments. Police and Fire Retirement Board, Paul Hiller, Republican, 2745 Burr Street, for a term of 11/16 to 11/20, to fill a vacancy for James Takami, whose term expired. May I have a motion to accept?
I'd like to table it, so do I accept it?
Well,
then?
we can do two things. You can take no action,
Right.
or we can move it and then postpone it once it, as the first act.
Why don't we postpone it?
Okay, so then if you'll make a motion to accept,
I'll make a motion to accept.
and you second,
Second.
any conversation or...
Oh, yeah, I'd like to make a motion to postpone
Okay, to a date certain?
to a date certain.
The next meeting?
We'll do the next meeting.
Okay. I know Mr. Hiller's had some difficulty making these. Does anybody know if he can make the next meeting?
I don't know. I haven't checked that with him. yet.
Okay, if you could check in the
Sure.
meantime. Is there a second?
To the postponement? Second.
All right. Any discussion on the postponement? Any comments from the public on the postponement and the postponement only? Seeing none, back to the board. Are we ready to vote?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Just, Chris, if you could just confirm that, so
Yeah.
if that doesn't work, we'll find a date, and then we'll postpone it to a date that it does work, but we'll know
Gotcha.
ahead of time.
Yep.
Okay. All right, next up, to hear, consider, and act upon the following appointments to the Burr Gardens Advisory Committee. Anna K. Taylor, unaffiliated, 105 Meeting House Lane, for a term of 11/16 to 11/19, and this is to fill a vacancy for Tara Burke, whose term expired. And 2, Robert Twardzik, unaffiliated, 561 Pequot Avenue, for a term of 11/16 to 11/19, to fill a vacancy for Michael J. Lee, whose term expired. May I have a motion to accept?
I'll make a motion.
A second?
Second.
All in favor? Any comments from the board?
Briefly spoke to Anna when she walked in today. I'm excited that she's willing to step up and serve on this committee. Appreciate you taking the time out of your life to do this work.
All right, Mr. Bateson?
Same, is that Robert? I don't think we met. How you doing, Robert? Yeah. No, I read all their stuff, I'm happy they're getting involved, so.
Okay.
Happy to support them.
Anna, we've had a chance to talk, and I appreciate all the work you're doing for the community, but also your husband. You're really a family tag team here, and we appreciate that tremendously, so thank you. And Robert, did I do okay on the pronunciation of your name? You kind of stepped me through that the other day on the phone, and I greatly appreciate that. As someone who has a two-syllable name, it gets mispronounced all the time. Agreed. And again, I want to thank both of you for stepping up. We've had a chance to talk a little bit about some of the things that are going on around here, improvements being made to Burr Mansion, and why I think this is an important time to look at the space out here, and I think that's a critical time. So thank you both for stepping up and donating your time. Any further comments from the board?
No.
Any comments from the public? Seeing none, back to the board. Are we ready to vote?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Great. Thank you to both of you.
Congratulations.
Right, next up, to hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Director of Public Works. Resolved that a solar power purchase agreement between the Town of Fairfield and Skyview Fairfield LLC for the purpose of erecting a photovoltaic electric generation system on the roof of the animal shelter at 211 Richard White Way for the sole benefit of the animal shelter. The term of the agreement being 20 years, be and hereby is approved. May I have a motion to accept?
Make a motion.
A second?
Second.
Any comments? First of all, I guess, Mr. Bowman, are you here to kind of make a presentation? I know, Mr. Bateson, you may have an amendment to this. Do you
he
want to
did.
make it now or after the presentation?
He took it, so he changed the document.
What's in front of us isn't, so we need to make sure that this resolution is correct.
Yeah, the resolution's correct, as stated, but
Yeah, no, it is Skyview Fairfield, it's just not at Connecticut
Yeah, it's a
LLC.
Delaware.
Is that okay?
Yeah, no, as long as the agreement's fine.
All right.
The thing that you signed,
Yep.
which they changed.
we switched it to Delaware. And you're now licensed in the state of Connecticut, so, as of the town line today. The lawyer apologized, he forgot to renew it.
So we could have kept it the same.
Well, no, it still had to be,
Oh, okay.
it's a Delaware
It's-
corporation, so.
Mr. Bateson, I think you made a good catch, and I'd rather be safe than sorry.
Plus, some of the older agreements also said the same thing, we had to go back and change to the older agreement. It was a very good catch. Again, it's our standard agreements, 8.5 cents a kilowatt hour, the price doesn't escalate, it's fixed for 20 years, so it's a very good contract. As our price goes up, we save more and more money every year.
Questions?
Yes, please.
Quick thing, Ed, I noticed a couple years ago when you did one of these, there was a packet of several down at the dump area.
Yeah.
And at that time, the cost per kilowatt for the town was 18 cents, and we signed these agreements that they were going to provide for 10.5. So I guess a lot of this depends upon the spread in there, whether it behooves us or not to do it. Now I see you know, here we are two years later, the kilowatt hour cost is now 19 cents to the town, but we're buying it under the PPA at 8.5. How does that go down? I would expect them, these providers, to keep the margin tight, so they
Well,
make,
They're bidding in, it's a reverse auction to the bid every year.
so Skyview came in at 8.5, that's why we went with them.
And so they're some are as low as 7.5, some are as high as 13.
Is that the ZREC process, Ed?
Zero across, right. It's a
Perhaps
combination
if you
of
could
the-
kind of explain that process so the board understands that.
You know, it goes back, the state created this concept where the power companies had to provide like 25% green power by 2025, I think it is. And they can do it in one of two ways. One is to do it themselves or contract with private companies to do it. So when they do it, they have an auction, a large ZREC, small ZREC, and medium ZREC, twice a year. And people get into it. It's a reverse auction. Whoever bids the lowest amount gets the contract. So if the higher amount, you're not going to get it. Now, that isn't necessarily the price to give us. That price then sets the base, but if it's a pure rooftop, it's cheap. You know, if it's a parking lot raised, it's more expensive. If it's like the landfill one, it's a mile away, so the prices change. But
I got you.
what I always said to them is that we're bidding against 15 cents. The original contract is 15 cents. That's what we pay back when. And they have to guarantee us that in 20 years, we won't
Okay.
pay more than 15 cents.
So this is a cheap install because it's
Yeah.
only servicing one building, and it's on top of that building. Okay. Quick thing, I just got some edits. If you just want, you sign this, right?
Yes, I will.
Okay, so if Sheila, if you could just note before Mike signs it, when I read through the thing, there just seems to be some words that seem wrong. I'll just point them out.
Okay, please.
And before you sign, just have whoever look at it. It's section 6.1. And it says provided pursuant to the tenets of this agreement. I assume that should mean terms.
Or tenants, but yes. one of the-
Something like
yeah.
that.
Sounds like somebody used a
Yeah. 6.3.1,
iPhone to dictate.
period during the TEMI within 30. That didn't seem right.
Yeah, that would be term, I bet. Yeah.
Right. 10.3.3, long teen weather, long term. And also, too, Schedule A, Appendix 1, it says plat maps. I don't know what a plat map is. Maybe it is something. It is a plat map? There is such a thing?
Yeah.
PLAT?
Yes.
Then you don't have to look at that one.
Do you want to take mine, clean copy, and give me yours so I can get the Sheila?
Sure. And that's that, and also too, Ed, what I noticed, they have a right, under that 8.5, is that's it? When we get the bill, that's what it's going to be? Because I see in here, they have the right to add administrative costs.
I haven't done anything like that.
Okay, but when you pay these bills, do they always stick to the 8.5?
Yes.
Okay, so there, even though I see in the contract,
Right, we get a monthly bill, and the amount of power produced and the agreed upon price per kilowatt hour, there's never been any add-ons.
okay, and I see one thing, they have under provider rights of termination, there's a couple, one of the things says if anything changes with the financial incentives. I assume that the ZREC is a financial incentive. When they build these things, does the provider take everything into consideration up front? Or let's say the ZREC program, 2 years from now, the state, let's say they get close to the 25% goal and the state's like, forget it, we don't want to do this program anymore. Would that change
No.
all the programs?
The existing ones are paid over 15 years. So sign a contract, get paid for 15 years. If they get to the top, they'll just stop bidding it out, there won't be any new projects.
Okay, so if they discontinue that ZREC program, it won't affect the contract that I'm in?
Right. The ZRECs are paid by UI, not by the state.
Okay, that's what.
So no, it's out of our bill it comes, yeah.
Okay, but if that rug gets pulled out from UI at the state level,
That'd be future contracts, they can't
they can't go back and
abrogate
touch
an
this?
existing contract, no.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. I'm good.
Chris, did you have any comments?
I support all solar projects on roofs. I think it's great, and savings is real. So thanks for doing the due diligence on this. And are there more coming in the pipe right now?
There will be some more, but depending on, we're looking at some may be coming, some may not. Like, we're looking at some parking lot ones in the high schools, that may or may not, we're working it through. We're looking for other rooftops, but we're running out of buildings. Like, we can't do anything independent solar, Old Town Office in a historic district. I'm trying to figure out a way around that. There doesn't seem to be a way around
Well,
that.
the
so.
virtual net metering would theoretically allow us to work around that.
Yes, we're looking at virtual net metering, and the place we'd like to do it is up on Hoyden's Hill, and the old farmer's field up there. If we put it in there, we'd put a good field in there, and that would supply, we could say, to this building, the old town hall, or other buildings where we can't do any. But virtual net metering, the amount of money they allow virtual net metering is very tiny for UI, so you can get maybe 5 years before you get there.
Okay. All right. How much of the power for the animal shelter will this produce?
Well, but we already have one. This is the second one. Between the two of them, it'll produce about 80% of the power.
80%?
Yeah.
Wow.
We don't want to get too much further. You get too close, you start having to sell power back to you at 4 cents, we're paying 8
Yeah, we
cents.
don't
We
wanna
don't
do
want to do that. So you keep it like around 80 at the top. At the rec center, we actually, a couple of months, we produced too much power, and we had to sell it back, but that was, we don't know how that happened. They cut, their use of power was a lot less that month. Maybe they closed early, I don't know. But that's the only time that's happened.
Okay. All right. Any further comments, questions on the board? Any comments from the public? Seeing none, back to the board. Are we ready to vote?
Yes.
All in favor? Aye. Bowman, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.
I was thinking, I told you, sometime the next one, I'm going to give you a report showing everything from the beginning, all the projects, how much they're actually making versus what we said, and also color aerial photos of all the installations. Because it's nicer, you can visualize them then, so.
Yes, please. Thank you. And then, just quickly in response, I saw you there, Scott Thompson from our Clean Energy Task Force currently has a project for putting solar panels at both high schools on the parking lot. He is taking that to the Board of Ed and the appropriate people, so it'll be a while before it gets to us, if it gets to us.
Didn't we go through one of these a couple of years ago, and it didn't go over too well?
We talked.
No, we looked at two things that didn't go over. One was at the Parking Authority parking lot.
Train station.
Yep.
That was it.
And
That's the one I'm
second was
thinking
the EV charging stations at the high schools didn't go.
of. It was the train station.
So the idea is to make sure this one gets in front of all the stakeholders before it gets to this board. So we're sure of kind of what their position's on. It's been very well publicized. Everybody's had time to comment before it goes any further. So just think of that as a preview of coming attractions. We've got next up on the agenda is the Strategic Plan Commission. What I would like to consider is a motion from the board to take the town attorney, item 8, out of order, since we know what we're going to do with that.
Okay.
Yep.
I have a motion to take that item out of order, item 8.
I'll make a motion.
A second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so that item is before us. Mr. Timiak, I think you had a motion for that.
You're right. I'd like to make a motion to put on the table. I thank Attorney Lesser for putting together his answers. I didn't get them till this afternoon in an email. I haven't had time to review them coming straight from work to the meeting, so I would like time to review them. Again, I thank him for his diligence in getting it done for this meeting, but I'd just like to table this for a future.
Yep, yeah, I think it was just a miscommunication. I think that someone saw a quote saying that it was requested they be back for here. It wasn't said by either of you at the last meeting. We didn't set a date for that, so didn't mean to put it on here and give you notice so that we actually hustled to get it done. Time to do that, but certainly postponing it doesn't cause a problem. Do you want to postpone it to the date certain, to the next meeting?
Sure.
Second.
And I appreciate the hustle to get it done, and, had I gotten it last night and I had time to review it, I would have been more comfortable having a discussion about it today. So.
Okay, no problem. So the item to postpone, motion to postpone that is before us. Any further comment here?
No.
Any comment from the public? Back to the board. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. All right, thank you. And then, so we're back
Back to
to
7.
item 7, which is the strategic plan discussion. We talked last time about possibly having some public comment. I think there are a couple individuals. I don't see them in the audience.
I got an email today.
From Mr. Reber?
Yes.
Yes, I got that just a few moments ago.
Right, that's the one I got.
So what I guess I'm looking at is that, one, if there's nobody here, that's not enough. We can certainly schedule another public comment on this, but at some point, if we get the committee off and running, they can comment to the committee. I'm thinking the idea is that if I would pick first steps, that we pick 5 people to be part of this, to get this off and do a quick charge that has them get this started for the first step on this, to define where we are, and also to hire a consultant.
I thought we were talking 3 people for the first phase. That's what I thought I remembered.
This says 3, I was thinking 5, but, you know, it's up to us as a board to decide that. I was thinking a couple more, just 3 is sometimes hard to get a quorum and folks together, that's all. But certainly from, it's going to be, it's up to our board, so we can do whatever on that side.
Okay. You want to make that motion tonight? Or-
What I would suggest is that, since this is a discussion, that in fact, that the number of people, that we draft up a charge for that first phase 1.
Yes.
That includes number of people, kind of we direct them to a task on this, on phase 1 of this, which is kind of where are we? And the idea that they will work with purchasing for generating an RFP
For a consultant?
for a consultant to work with us through this. And that's part of why I'm looking at 5 people, get a little more expertise perhaps in there in doing that. But those would be my thoughts. I'm happy to draft something up that says that. You all can think about it, and if you want to change that at our meeting or give me some feedback before, I'll try and incorporate that into what we are.
I'm okay with you drafting that up. I really want to focus on trying to get initial people from different sort of stakeholders, maybe one from the university, one from the business community, so we have a great representation to get the ball rolling so that they can really identify who we want to hire or what type of consultant, how the RFP should be written. So if it means including an extra sector or 2 in the overall initial membership to move it from 3 to 5, and we have really good identifiable people who want to be active and part of this, I think it makes sense to do that. So,
And I think by having the charge and laying that out, we then can put out a press release saying what we're up to and kind of reach out to the community and get people from different segments in.
Yeah, I could see going to 5 people if you want to take that approach. I like that.
Yeah.
Like maybe one from the business community, small retail, large corporate, 2,
nonprofit,
And then we get,
university.
the university, I get it, because those are major stakeholders, I get that.
Yeah. Well, think in terms of which stakeholders, because we can certainly incorporate that into our press release going out asking for volunteers.
Okay. Yeah, but I was thinking originally up front 3 people, but if seeing that approach, I could see going to 5, yeah.
Yeah. So, that was my thing. 3 people to get it running and get it moving fast is good, but if we have 5...
I was thinking 3 is a steering committee to where you want to go, but it seems like we're eliminating that and going right into phase 1.
I think so.
Yeah.
And
that's fine, if that's where you want to go.
Yeah, take it,
I see
that was
more
my
people.
thought, but let's take, I think the idea is to have that proposal in front of us.
Right.
Let's take a look at this, think about that from now on next meeting, and let's be ready to take action on firming that up and finalizing.
So we should be ready to take action
On a charge.
on a charge at the next
and-
meeting.
And identifying key stakeholder segments, so we can get that into our requests for volunteers. That sound okay?
That works.
Good.
All right. All right. Any comments from the public? All right. Seeing none, back to the board. It looks like we're done with that, and moving on to the tax collector item next. I do have a comment to read, just to kind of communication.
Do you want to put the item before us first, before you read it?
Yes, sure. If I can have a motion to accept, to consider and act upon tax refunds as recommended by the tax collector in the amount recommended. If I can have a motion to accept.
I'll make a motion.
A second?
Second.
And thank you, Mr. Bateson. I do have communication that there was an error made in the tax refund paperwork that went before the Board of Selectmen's meeting on February 1st. This mistake was caught before the refund paperwork was forwarded to Finance, so we don't have to reverse a refund. A signed refund request was returned to us after it was discovered that the account was not actually due a refund. I believe this note went to the entire Board of Selectmen.
Did.
And it's my understanding from Finance that since we approved the total that was higher than the amount, we don't have to take any action. We're just, since we're authorized for a larger amount, we're just are doing smaller amounts, so there's no action this board has to take. We don't have to rescind it, reverse it, renew it. But I did want to make sure everybody was clear on that. Is that okay?
I am clear on it.
All right. Then on with the item. Any amendments?
I do, I have an amendment to make.
Okay.
I'd like to remove the word recommended and change the amount to $8,889.56, followed by a period.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, the amendment's before us. Any further discussion on the amendment?
No.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the item as amended is before us. Any further comment on the item as amended?
I'd like to thank the due diligence of the tax collection office for finding that error. It was good work.
Duly noted.
Yes.
Duly noted. We'll make sure they hear that back. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next up, to hear, consider, and act upon any other business that shall properly come before this meeting. Any other business?
None.
Just, if I might, just briefly on the budget, since there's so much going on, and Chris, you've got some insights into what's taking place in Stratford. It looks like following the governor's proposal, and when we look through all the items, it is currently anticipated that the cut to Fairfield, compared to the fiscal 17 budget that we approved, would be $14.5 million. So that's what we're wrestling with. That includes $9 million for the state teachers' pension fund, if that were to hold. It also includes $3.5 million reduction in ECS, educational cost sharing. It includes a 3.3 reduction in extra cost funding for special ed. There is a component that adds in $2 million more for special ed, so the net reduction of special ed is $1.2 million. There's some other items that are plus or minus than that, but those are the three big topics that, as we've been able to determine, there are a host of questions. Chris, I know you were at the CCM meeting with me the other day.
Right.
We spoke with Ben Barnes. We got some answers, but we also have some more questions, and I think that's, there were quite a few towns represented there, and I think there's some broad-based questions is exactly what it is, how does it work, what's taking place. The other level of questioning is how much of this will actually get through the legislature. Ben Barnes from OPM said that this is the first step. The legislative leadership has said this is the first step. Everybody's talking about having a final answer in May or June. The problem with that, as you all know, is that we're going to set our budget at the end of April, with setting our mill rate in May. And normally, the state budget process always works this way. The changes to municipal aid have been relatively minor in the past. These are dramatic and big, so there are a host of questions about the process, what's taken place. We are looking at what our options are. Our guideline has always been to use the best available information, and right now the best available information is the governor's proposal, because nobody can tell us exactly what else would happen with any certainty, so we're kind of stuck with the governor's proposal that, as you well know, causes all sorts of headaches. Chris, I know you're wrestling with that in Stratford, so we'll kind of proceed on that basis. It may be, and I've got the town attorney looking at what happens if, in fact, we overestimate how much we need to raise. And the question becomes, can we lower the mill rate in June if we find out that the state legislature has taken action that is beneficial to the town? I don't have an answer on that yet, but that's what I've got. I'm researching.
We're bound by charter to set our mill rate at a certain date, aren't we? By tax bills, everything, right?
Not specifically by a certain date. We have some flexibility. We looked at last year because of we were in a reverse situation where the cuts were coming in later, and we were hoping to potentially look at raising our mill rate later. We found out that it was possible to do that. There wasn't an appetite on this board or the Board of Finance to do that. And I forget at the moment who sets that. It might be this board that determines that. So I believe we can do it later than that. We can postpone it to a certain degree. Because at some point, state statutes allow for us not to approve a budget at all and have a mechanism for going into the new fiscal year without an approved budget. Our charter doesn't really contemplate that, but state statute does. So I think I think everybody right now is still planning on setting the mill rate when we do. Our real issue is that the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance sign off on the budget roughly at the end of March.
Yeah.
So we can no longer make adjustments either way after the Board of Finance votes. The RTM can just cut it.
Right, and that sounds where all these adjustments are, right? At the top.
Yeah, but it might be moving money from, it's some go up, some go down based on what they actually do. And that's the problem. They can't say, if they could just say, you know, the pension switch won't happen, that would be one thing. But nobody is saying anything definitively, as much as nobody's standing up supporting the governor's budget that I'm aware of. I don't mean to say that. Certainly some of the big cities seem positive about it, but that's about all. So I just wanted to give you an update as to where we were. Chris, anything you can add to that?
I mean, the number you threw out, what was that again?
14.5 million.
Yeah, I had a rough calculation less than that, just sort of eyeballing the Fairfield number. As you at home absorb that number, I mean, we're wrestling with it too. I know I've been in several conversations with different towns across the state and how they're preparing for this too. Every municipal government is, I want to say, blindsided by the dramatic nature of these cuts across the state, and it's forcing me to re-examine what we offer as a town or how we're going to go about funding this moving forward, because it's such a monumental shift of what we're used to having from the state of Connecticut. I mean, I think the timing of the strategic plan we're putting forward coincides, you know, with long-term planning, but right now, the $14 million number, what would that be, just a mill rate increase on that 14 mil?
I don't, and let's take a look at two things. One, there's no question, I agree with you, this is the fiscal equivalent or financial equivalent of Storm Sandy hitting. We haven't had anything this dramatic, and the concern is that it's kind of like you haven't opened your windows yet. You're not sure if Storm Sandy's actually hit, because we don't know what the legislature's going to do. So we have to plan for this,
Right.
but somehow allow for the legislative changes. But if this were to hit, let's say, it depends on what your base is, and if you'll, just from easy math, if you let me say if there was a tax increase in the 2.5% to 3% range normally, 14 million is something like a 5 or 6% increase on top of that. So that's something in the 8 to 9% range, which is not going to happen. But that, if we didn't adjust expenses, if we didn't adjust the budget, if we didn't go back and find anything else, that's where we'd be left. So that's a very scary number, and that's why I'm making this equivalent of Storm Sandy. That's just a huge financial hit.
It's enormous. And again, we're definitely not the only town in the state looking at this right now. My hope is that the state gives us some sort of tools to manage this effectively, whether they eliminate things out of the governor's budget earlier. But as Ben Bart said at the CCM meeting, he has the advantage of going first. They went first. They can propose whatever they want. Unfortunately, the municipalities go second. And then it's not for a month or 2 months or maybe even 3 months later until we get the final answer from the state. But it's not a small swing. It's not something we'll be able to easily absorb the state number without proper planning and the due diligence on our part. But
No, dramatic changes on that. Mr. Bateson, any follow-up from you?
I didn't know it was 14 million. That kind of took my breath away on that one.
Yeah, the number you'll see in some of the analysis is in the $7.5 million range, but some of that is a timing issue. That $7.5 million is based on the last state budget, but our budget was passed, and we had $3.5 million in ECS funding in that. The state has since subtracted $2.5 million of that during the past year. They're counting that as part of last year's budget, so they're saying that, no, you don't have $1 million, we're only dropping you $1 million. In point of fact, compared to last year's budget, we're going down $3.5 million. The state is not including $3.3 million in excess cost sharing. In the governor's proposal, he didn't talk about that. He only talked about the extra $2 million we get, but he didn't talk about the $3.3 million we're not getting for special ed. So that's a $1 million reduction in this. Our ECS costs are zero, reimbursement is down to zero. Our special ed funding is down $1 million. There's $9 million added on top of that. So when you look at some of those numbers, they add up pretty fast.
I got to tell you, though, you did say something that caught me off guard that I failed to consider, and that was the fact that I agree with the concept of we have the bad information in front of us, and you should build your budget around that to include it. But, that's thinking I'm thinking that as a layperson, like, yes, that's conservative, that's what we should do. But then I'm sitting here taking it the step further that you're saying, and then I'm actually sending tax bills out on that.
Well,
When that might not actually be the case, and let's say something happens and that 14 million winds up being 7 million, now I've got 7 million of taxpayer money that I don't need, so I've overtaxed. That brings up something like, well, maybe I shouldn't really budget for the 14 million, losing the 14 million.
The issue becomes a combination of, one, we'll be getting some rumors of different information as we go through the process. The only definitive thing we have is a recommendation now. There are a couple steps. Appropriation may vote.
I hear you,
So
but
all
I
that.
just, when
So
it comes to,
yeah.
when we're actually setting the budget at this table, I'm going to really have a problem if it's, if your recommended budget says 14 million, it'd just be like, well, what if?
Yeah.
What if it's not 14 million? I've taken all this money from the taxpayer that,
And again,
what, are we going to have a party?
Ed, just to be clear, that's why I'm asking the town attorney to look at state statutes to see if later in the process we find out that we can actually lower the mill rate that was passed. If we can, then we're not in a situation that you just proposed. But that is a concern, and I think that's a concern
Yeah.
everybody has. And it's the reverse side. If you're in the big cities where you think you're going to win, if you go through and set a mill rate based on money you think you're getting, and then it doesn't come,
they lose.
now you've set a mill rate that doesn't cover your expenses. So there are 169 municipalities in this state that aren't happy with this situation, this process, and these big swings. So one thing I think that unites us all is we're not happy with the state budget process and what's taken place. So yes, your thoughts are all
I didn't know.
on point, but
I didn't think that one, though. That was.
well, that's why I've gotten so much gray hair since last week. But anyway, and if there's no further discussion, I have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.